2021's been an exciting year for mobile gaming as several PC and console ports rose to fame on mobile devices, while others took a more traditional route. It's interesting to see the diversity that we currently have in mobile gaming, ranging from MMORPGs and online shooters to pragmatic puzzle games and arcade-style platformers. Mobile games currently have as much diversity as there is on PC and consoles. As we push towards the end of the year, we can only hope to finish on a good note with other games that are to be released. But until then, let's take a look at the 10 best mobile games of 2021 so far.
When the citizens are in trouble, they call the authorities. When the authorities are in trouble, they call the bounty hunters.
Showtime!
Coffee Stain and Easy Trigger come together to give us their 80s-inspired action platformer Huntdown, which was released last year on PC and console to a very well-deserved positive reception. The game was initially developed for mobile devices, and sometimes it's quite easy to identify that given several obvious design choices. It's now returned to its original form with very negligible changes, which is a good thing. We wanted the game to be exactly the same as it was on PC and console. Although Huntdown feels like you've seen it before somewhere else, the way the game plays is probably its greatest feature. Set in a dystopian cyberpunk future, players have to choose between 3 bounty hunters who make a living from maintaining the streets. Characters have their own unique default pistol and a distinctive throwable item giving them their own personality, but to be honest, these differences feel minimal. Huntdown is available on both iOS and Android. With hordes of gacha games coming out on mobile in the past couple of years, Another Eden, The Cat Beyond Time and Space really stands out on its vision to create a game whose standards are above the ordinary. Another Eden, The Cat Beyond Time and Space is a free-to-play role-playing video game developed and published by Right Flyer Studios. The collaborative works of writer Masato Kato and music composer Yasunori Mitsuda, who have both worked on Xenogears and the Chrono series, shine bright in this one, and when you got veterans like them on the team, you know the game's gonna turn heads. Recent mobile RPGs have somewhat drawn players to spend real-life money to access locked features of the game, but Another Eden changes that perspective and focuses on revamping the traditional JRPG genre for modern use, while still keeping all the game's charm intact. Another Eden, The Cat Beyond Time and Space is available on iOS and Android. Let's start with an adjective here. Refreshing. Behind the Frame, The Finest Scenery is an interesting game to say the least. What it does best is its puzzle/elements rounded off with gorgeous artwork and a fantastic soundtrack that really doesn't disappoint. This puzzle dimension is really what takes the cake though, and when you think about it, the game makes more sense like this than any other overly flashy and complex game out there. The art style that we've come to see on most YouTube lo-fi compilations is what controls the visuals of this game, giving it a clean and beautiful look. When talking about the narrative as a whole, the game does a great job at keeping it real, giving you the feeling that every single component's been delivered to you with love. Players play as an aspiring artist trying to piece together a submission to an art gallery, but just as it is in real life, nothing's as simple as that. Gameplay mostly involves point-and-click style puzzles, and they're so refreshing and wholesome to solve. The game's available on both iOS and Android.
Gotta believe in yourself.
What did you just say?
Oh, and strap in, it's going to be a wild ride.
Say No More is strange, but in a very good way. It imagines a world where say no is literally forbidden. Unique? Yes. Also weird? Yes. See what I did there? This take on the everlasting yes man isn't a very subtle approach, but the game does a fantastic job at creating this hilarious world. Say No More is a wonderful one-button adventure that empowers you to fight back against the status quo through self-expression, and to be honest, a lot of us really need that. The quirky visuals and the hilarious voice acting create a beautiful vibe that adds so much flavour to the game. Say No More takes you on a trip as an intern from their first day at work with your best friend in some really nightmarish work conditions. With the help of a handy cassette tool you find in your work area, you can finally proclaim your self-expression by saying no. The game has several customization options, allowing you to be whoever you want to be whenever needed, including saying no in a whole bunch of languages other than English. Say No More is available on Android and iOS.
Only 4 truly unruly heroes can turn back that dark tide and restore order to heaven and earth.
The easiest way to describe Unruly Heroes is an action-oriented platformer, but the beauty of this game is that like most platformers that don't really perform well on mobile devices, this one actually does a fantastic job. It's taken astute inspiration from the Rayman series and it is quite evident. Look, don't get me wrong, the game is great on its own turf, but you'll see several similarities with other mobile platformers. Nonetheless, the game's a charming and fresh platformer that surprises at every turn while feeling and looking great. Unruly Heroes is a level-based game where you have to run, jump, and fight your way through tight scenarios and environments that would only take a couple of minutes to complete otherwise. Players have 4 characters to choose from, each having their own unique powers to help players get through each level. Instead of controlling them simultaneously, you simply switch between them by accessing their character portraits at the top of the screen. Now this game looks like Persona and Nier Automata went on a date. In other words, it looks brilliant. There aren't many games that can pull off this style quite as good as Punishing, and the best part is this game is on mobile. The game brings out the best action in any anime-esque hack-and-slash RPG title out there while humbly delivering it to you on a mobile device. Personally, Punishing, Grey Raven's stunning visuals and engaging storyline bring out real character in the game, and the action RPG unapologetically demands your attention, which you should really give into. The devs at Kuro Games outdid themselves with this one. This game's available on Android and iOS. In the age of online looter shooters and MMOS games, it's really hard to find a game like Bracelet that's so deeply driven in its narrative. When you do find one, which in this case is Bracelet, your second step is to understand if the game is worth your time. Bracelet checks most of those boxes and does a great job at it as well. A game created by Machine Boy, aka Mattis Folkestad, and originally for the Nintendo Switch, Bracelet empowers players through dealing with loss, self-discovery, and magic. To put it in more comfortable words, it's a mobile game that puts its story first. The game is an adventure game where you play as Jesper, a 17-year-old who has problems all around. A visit to his grandpa seemingly changes all of that, who gives him a bracelet with magical powers in what looks to be a pretty cliche granddad-son relationship. Nonetheless, the art style and the narrative really hold the game well, giving it a wonderful and colourful atmosphere. A whole bunch of point-and-click puzzles are scattered around the game for you to solve while experiencing its great storyline. Bracelet is available on Android. Nova Island feels like it's ported from a console, but when you start playing with it, you know it's made for mobile. It's rare to find such titles nowadays, with so many games coming out as ports of consoles and PC games. The quality of Nova Island makes the game even more special. The game purposefully didn't take the MMO multiplayer approach, and its unique mechanics and charming aesthetic make it a real breath of fresh air. Nova Island is an online multiplayer card game with only a 1v1 capacity, where the objective isn't to destroy your opponent, surprisingly, but instead you play as professionals who are all competing for territory as you collect a valuable resource called Nova. We're not too sure why Novas are so valuable, and that isn't stopping us from playing this wonderful game though. It's a setup for controlling territories to try and collect 20 Novas before your opponent does. Nova Island is available on both Android and iOS. At first glance, Fantasia looks like a seriously unique game with its diorama-made graphics and detailed 3D characters. It's quite a surprise that the developers packed all of this in a wonderful package for mobile devices. When you do get the game, you know why it's on this list in the first place. The game not only looks good, but it also plays like a charm. Fantasia, for what it's worth, is a console-quality RPG, and I'm sure by no means was it easy for it to be developed for mobile devices, but it delivers the classic feel of RPGs and takes the genre to a whole new level. The art style is another thing to be impressed by, with its Final Fantasy-esque visual and character models, and it feels like a revival for JRPGs. Fantasia is currently only a 2-part adventure with a huge world to explore and plenty to do. Fantasia is available only on iOS.
So I grabbed him by the belt, and I threw him overboard.
Overboard takes the sus out of Among Us and places it in a conversational text-based adventure game. It's the kind of game where you're technically the killer and you're trying to do your best to stay in the shadows without actually putting on a killer's mask. Despite how horrific it sounds, Overboard is actually quite light-hearted. Players assume the role of Veronica Villancy, a starlet leaving Britain aboard an ocean liner heading into New York in the 1930s. Quite a wonderful set if you ask me. It sometimes feels like I'm walking through a description from one of Agatha Christie's books. In the game, you've murdered your husband and no one has a clue about what's actually happening other than you. It's basically a game on how you can get away with murder. This one's a great adventure for mobile as its art style and music add such a brilliant atmosphere, you're probably going to want to stick around. Overboard is available on both Android and iOS. Honorable mentions. Retro Goal. Retro Goal's everything that you'll need in a good sports game on a mobile device. I love how simple the art style is as well, reminding us of FIFA 98 during its prime and practically every other game that came out in the 90s. Sports games on mobile can always be a little bit tricky, but I feel Retro Goal fills in the gaps that most soccer games don't. It has a mode for everything, and it's a game that can be enjoyed by casual as well as hardcore soccer fans. Retro Goal is available on both Android and iOS. Runestrike. Not to be mistaken with the legendary RuneScape, Runestrike is a highly engaging and strategic game that puts you in the shoes of mortal champions wielding the power to overthrow gods. Essentially, the game is a unique collectible card game with several scenarios to fight through and the basic objective to battle mythical creatures and gods. Pretty neat for a card game actually. Runestrike is available on both Android and iOS. Which mobile games did you like the most then? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this list, consider subscribing to Gaming Region and hitting that like button. You have no idea how much it helps us. As always, see you in the next one.